It was supposed to be a quick trip. My friend, Ravi, had inherited a house from his late uncle, a recluse who lived in the middle of nowhere. Ravi couldn't make it to inspect the property himself, so he asked me for a favor. He knew I had a thing for exploring old, abandoned places. I'd always been fascinated by their history, the untold stories hiding in creaky floors and peeling wallpaper. "Just check it out," Ravi had said over the phone. "Let me know if it's worth fixing up or if I should just sell it as is. There's no rush, but I'd appreciate your help." The drive out there was uneventful. It was late autumn, and the countryside was painted in shades of orange and brown. The house stood at the end of a long gravel road, surrounded by a dense forest. It looked like something out of an old photograph, its white paint faded and chipped, the roof sagging slightly. The windows were dark, and the whole place had an air of abandonment that sent a shiver down my spine. "Just a house?" I muttered to myself as I parked the car. "Nothing to worry about." I grabbed my bag, which contained a flashlight, my phone, and a few snacks. Ravi had warned me that there was no electricity or running water, so I brought a couple of bottles of water and a power bank for my phone. The plan was simple: take some pictures, jot down a few notes, and be out before dark. The front door was unlocked, creaking loudly as I pushed it open. The air inside was musty, carrying the scent of old wood and mildew. The first room was a living area, with faded wallpaper and a dusty couch. A large fireplace dominated one wall, and above it hung a portrait of an older man who I assumed was Ravi's uncle. His stern expression and piercing eyes seemed to follow me as I moved through the room. "Creepy?" I said aloud, my voice echoing slightly in the empty space. I took a few pictures and moved on. The kitchen was small, with outdated appliances and a table covered in a layer of dust. A single chair was pulled out, as if someone had been sitting there recently. I frowned but shrugged it off. Maybe Ravi's uncle had left it like that before he passed. The rest of the house was just as unremarkable. 2 small bedrooms upstairs, a bathroom with a cracked mirror, and a basement that smelled of damp earth. It was in the basement that I found the first odd thing. Against one wall was a locked door, heavy and made of metal. It seemed out of place in an otherwise ordinary house. "What the hell?" I muttered, running my hand over its surface. There was no visible keyhole, just a small, circular indent near the center. I made a mental note to ask Ravi about it later. As the afternoon wore on, I decided to take a break. I sat on the porch steps, eating a granola bar and sipping water while the sun dipped lower in the sky. The forest around the house was eerily quiet, the only sounds being the occasional rustle of leaves and the distant call of a bird. When I went back inside, the atmosphere felt different. The shadows seemed darker, the air heavier. I chalked it up to my imagination and continued exploring, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. It was around 5 p.m. when I heard it. A faint creak, like a footstep on an old wooden floor. I froze, my heart pounding. "Hello," I called out, my voice trembling slightly. No response. I took a cautious step toward the staircase, peering up at the second floor. The hallway was empty, the doors to the bedrooms slightly ajar. Swallowing hard, I climbed the stairs, each creak making my stomach tighten. When I reached the top, I stood still, listening. Another sound, this time from the bedroom on the right. A faint rustling, like fabric brushing against something. "Ravi," I called, even though I knew it couldn't be him. I pushed the door open slowly. The room was as I'd left it earlier, the bed unmade and the wardrobe door ajar. But something was different. On the floor near the bed was a shoe. A man's shoe, scuffed and muddy. I hadn't noticed it before. A chill ran down my spine as I backed out of the room. My mind raced. Had someone been here the whole time? Had they followed me in? I hurried downstairs, my flashlight now in my hand. I needed to leave. As I reached the front door, I stopped. The door was closed, but I had left it open when I stepped outside earlier. My breath caught in my throat. Someone was here. I turned toward the kitchen, my eyes scanning for anything I could use as a weapon. A rusty knife on the counter caught my attention, and I grabbed it, holding it tightly. My hands were shaking, but I felt a little safer with something to defend myself. Then I heard it again. Footsteps, deliberate and slow, coming from the basement. My heart pounded in my ears as I moved toward the basement door. It was open, though I was certain I had closed it earlier. The darkness beyond was impenetrable, even with my flashlight. "Who's there?" I demanded, my voice echoing down the stairs. No answer. I considered running out of the house and driving away, but something compelled me to stay. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe it was the anger bubbling up inside me at the thought of someone sneaking around while I was there. I descended the stairs slowly, the knife in one hand and the flashlight in the other. The basement was empty, except for the locked metal door. I scanned the room, my flashlight beam bouncing off the damp walls. Then I saw it, a piece of paper pinned to the door. I moved closer, my pulse racing, and read the hastily scrawled words, "Get out." The sound of footsteps behind me made me whirl around, but the beam of my flashlight revealed nothing. I backed up against the metal door, my breathing ragged. Whoever was in the house wasn't trying to hide anymore. I bolted up the stairs, slamming the basement door shut behind me. My only thought was to get to my car and leave. But as I reached the living room, I saw him. A man stood near the fireplace, his face partially hidden in shadow. He was tall, with unkempt hair and a wild look in his eyes. "What do you want?" I shouted, holding the knife in front of me. He didn't answer. Instead, he took a step toward me. My instincts kicked in and I threw the knife. It missed, clattering to the floor, but it gave me enough time to run. I darted out the front door, sprinting toward my car. The engine roared to life, and I sped down the gravel road, not daring to look back. My hands were trembling so much that I could barely grip the steering wheel. When I finally reached the main road, I pulled over and called the police. They arrived at the house an hour later but found no sign of the man. The only evidence was the piece of paper in the basement, which they bagged as evidence. Ravi decided to sell the house without ever setting foot in it. I never went back, but I still think about that man. Who was he? Why was he there? And why did he let me go? Some questions I've learned are better left unanswered. The sun was just beginning to set as I pulled into the parking lot of an old, derelict factory on the edge of town. The place had been abandoned for years, its windows shattered and walls covered in graffiti. But tonight, it wasn't empty. Tonight, it was the meeting point for an unusual invitation I had received. A week ago, an envelope had been slipped under my apartment door. Inside was a single piece of paper folded neatly. It read, "You're invited to a game of wits. Come alone to the old textile factory on Friday at 7 p.m. Trust no one." It was unsigned, and there was no indication of who had sent it or why. At first, I thought it was a joke, maybe a prank by someone who knew about my love for puzzles and escape rooms. But the more I thought about it, the more intrigued I became. Against my better judgment, I decided to go. Now, as I sat in my car staring at the crumbling building, I began to question my decision. The place looked like it could collapse at any moment, and the surrounding area was eerily quiet. Still, curiosity got the better of me. I grabbed my flashlight and a small pocket knife, just in case, and stepped out of the car. The main entrance was a set of double doors, one of which hung crookedly on its hinges. I pushed it open, the sound of metal scraping against concrete echoing through the cavernous space inside. The air was thick with dust, and the faint smell of oil and rust lingered. "Hello," I called out, my voice bouncing off the walls. No response. I stepped further inside, shining my flashlight around. The interior was a maze of machinery and conveyor belts, all covered in decades of grime. A faint noise caught my attention, a rhythmic tapping, like someone was knocking on metal. I followed the sound, my footsteps crunching on debris. The tapping led me to a central area where a single folding table and chair had been set up. On the table was an old-fashioned tape recorder and a small piece of paper folded in half. I unfolded it and read, "Welcome to the game. Press play to begin." I hesitated, looking around for any signs of movement. The place seemed empty, but the sensation of being watched was overwhelming. Taking a deep breath, I pressed the button on the recorder. The tape whirred to life, and a distorted voice began to speak. "Good evening, player. You've chosen to participate in a game of survival. Hidden within this factory is the key to your freedom. Find it before time runs out or face the consequences. Beware, you are not alone. Trust no one." The tape clicked off, leaving me in silence. My heart was pounding, and my mind raced with questions. Was this some kind of elaborate hoax? Or was I really in danger? Before I could decide what to do next, the lights flickered on, illuminating the factory in a dim, yellow glow. I heard a noise behind me and spun around, flashlight in hand. A figure darted out of sight, disappearing behind a row of machinery. My first instinct was to call out, but the voice from the tape echoed in my mind. Trust no one. I tightened my grip on the flashlight and moved cautiously toward where I had seen the figure. The machinery created a labyrinth of shadows and narrow pathways, each one feeling like it could be a trap. As I rounded a corner, I saw something glinting on the floor. It was a small key, attached to a piece of paper with the number 1 written on it. I picked it up and examined it, but before I could make sense of it, the lights flickered again. This time, they went out completely, plunging the factory into darkness. My flashlight became my only source of light, its beam cutting through the thick blackness. The rhythmic tapping returned, louder this time and closer. I turned in circles, trying to locate the source, but it seemed to come from everywhere at once. My breathing quickened as a new sound joined the tapping. Footsteps. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice shaking. No response. I backed up against a wall, trying to steady myself. Suddenly, a hand grabbed my shoulder from behind. I spun around, swinging the flashlight, but there was no one there. My heart felt like it might burst out of my chest as I stumbled forward, desperate to find a way out. I saw a staircase leading to a second level and ran up, my footsteps echoing loudly. At the top, I found another piece of paper taped to a door. This one read, "Do you think you're clever? Prove it. Solve the riddle to proceed. I am not alive, but I grow. I don't have lungs, but I need air. I don't have a mouth, and yet I drown. What am I?" I racked my brain, trying to focus despite the growing sense of dread. The answer came to me suddenly. Fire. I looked around for anything that could confirm my guess and saw a small box mounted on the wall with a fire extinguisher symbol on it. Inside was another key, this one labeled 2. As I took the key, the sound of footsteps returned, faster and more deliberate. Someone was coming up the stairs. I bolted through the door, slamming it shut behind me and locking it with the new key. The hallway beyond was long and dimly lit, with doors lining both sides. I had no idea where to go, but I couldn't stay in one place. I ran down the hallway, trying each door as I passed. Most were locked, but one opened into a small office. Inside was a desk, a filing cabinet, and another note. "You're halfway there, but the hunter is closing in. Keep moving, hunter." My blood ran cold at the thought. Was someone actually hunting me? And if so, why? The lights flickered again, and a shadow crossed the doorway. I ducked behind the desk, holding my breath. The sound of heavy boots entered the room, pausing near the desk. I could see the tips of the intruder's shoes from my hiding spot. They lingered for a moment before turning and leaving the room. I waited until the footsteps faded before creeping out of my hiding spot. My only thought was to find the exit, but I had no idea where it was. The factory was a maze, and every turn seemed to lead me further into its depths. The next hour was a blur of running, hiding, and solving cryptic riddles left on scraps of paper. Each clue led me to another key, and each key brought me closer to what I hoped was the way out. But the hunter was never far behind, always just a step away. I caught glimpses of him, a tall figure in dark clothing, his face obscured by a mask. Finally, I reached a large, open room with a single door at the far end. Above it, in bold letters, were the words, "Exit." Relief washed over me as I ran toward it, using the final key to unlock it. The door swung open, revealing the cool night air. I stumbled outside, my legs trembling with exhaustion. But my relief was short-lived. Standing a few feet away was the hunter, his mask reflecting the moonlight. He raised a hand, and I saw he was holding something, a tape recorder. He pressed play, and the distorted voice from before crackled to life. "Congratulations, player. You've won. For now." Without another word, the hunter turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving me standing there, shaken and confused. I didn't wait to find out what would happen next. I ran to my car and drove away, vowing never to return. To this day, I don't know who sent the invitation or why I was chosen. But one thing is certain, I'll never look at games the same way again. So, I'm not sure if this is the right place to post this, but I'm still shaken up and I need to get this off my chest. This happened just 3 nights ago, and I'm honestly not sure how I made it out alive. I'm posting from a throwaway because I don't want this tied back to my real name. I don't even know if I'm safe. It all started with a house I've been driving by for years. I live in a small town where everyone knows everyone, but there's this one house, the old Harrington place, that's always been empty as far as I can remember. It's at the edge of the woods, hidden by overgrown trees and tall grass. Kids used to dare each other to run up to the porch and knock, but no one ever stayed long. Rumors swirled about it being haunted, cursed, or whatever. I never paid much attention. That is, until last week, when I found a flyer tucked under my windshield wiper after work. It wasn't a typical junk flyer. It was black with white text, printed neatly, and it simply said, "The Harrington house welcomes you. Come alone after dark. An experience you'll never forget." No phone number, no explanation. My first thought was that someone was pulling a prank. But then, I noticed something odd. The flyer had my name printed at the bottom. My full name. I'd never told anyone about my weird fascination with that house. How did they know? Curiosity got the better of me. I told myself it had to be a local trying to mess with me. I didn't want to play along. But the idea of finally seeing the inside of that house gnawed at me. By the time the sun set on Saturday, I had made up my mind. I grabbed a flashlight, a can of pepper spray, and headed out. The house looked even more intimidating up close. Its windows were broken, the wood on the porch creaked under my weight, and the air felt heavy. As I approached the front door, I noticed something strange. It wasn't locked. The handle turned easily, and the door creaked open, revealing complete darkness inside. I stepped in cautiously, the smell of damp wood and mildew hitting me immediately. The entryway was sparse, just an old rug and a wooden staircase leading to the second floor. My flashlight beam landed on a piece of paper taped to the wall. It said, "Welcome. My name. The game begins now. Find the key to leave. You have until dawn." My stomach dropped. I froze, flashlight trembling in my hand. My first instinct was to turn around and bolt, but as I swung the flashlight toward the door, I saw it. It was shut, and there was no handle on the inside, just a smooth, featureless surface. The panic started to creep in. I took a deep breath and tried to stay calm. If this was some sick joke, I'd figure it out and get out of here. I turned back to the note and saw faint arrows drawn on the wall, leading deeper into the house. The next part is where it gets terrifying. I followed the arrows, which led me to a narrow hallway. Every step I took seemed to echo loudly, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The first room I entered was a kitchen. The counters were covered in dust, and broken plates littered the floor. On the table was another note. "Key 1 is hidden where life is sustained." I scanned the room, my brain racing. Where life is sustained? The fridge? The sink? I opened the fridge, which groaned loudly, revealing nothing but rusted shelves. Then I checked the sink, shining my flashlight inside. There was something wedged in the drain, a small, rusted box. My hands shook as I pried it out and opened it. Inside was a brass key, engraved with the number 1. Before I could celebrate, I heard it. A single, deliberate footstep coming from the hallway. I froze, barely breathing, straining to hear. Then came another step, louder this time. Someone was out there. I turned off my flashlight, crouched low, and held my breath. The footsteps grew closer, slow and deliberate, until they were right outside the kitchen door. I clutched the pepper spray, my fingers trembling. The door creaked open, and my heart felt like it was going to explode. A shadow stretched across the floor as something, entered the room. They stopped in the middle of the kitchen, standing completely still. I couldn't make out much in the darkness, but the figure was tall and hunched, their breathing raspy and uneven. I bit my lip, praying they wouldn't notice me. Then they spoke. A low, gravelly voice that made my skin crawl. "I know you're here." I didn't wait to find out what they wanted. As quietly as I could, I slipped through the doorway on the other side of the kitchen and bolted down the hallway. My heart was pounding, and I could hear the sound of heavy boots chasing after me. I ducked into another room and slammed the door behind me, locking it with the key I'd found. The room was small, with bare walls and a single table in the center. On it was another note. "You found the first key, but the hunter is closer than you think. Solve this to proceed. I speak without a mouth and hear without ears. I have no body, but I come alive with wind. What am I? A riddle." My mind raced, trying to focus despite the adrenaline coursing through me. I spoke without a mouth, came alive with wind? The answer hit me, an echo. But what was I supposed to do with that? As I scanned the room, I noticed something on the far wall. A small panel with a speaker and a microphone. I walked over, pressed the button, and whispered, "Echo." There was a soft click, and a hidden compartment in the table slid open, revealing another key. This one was marked with the number 2. The rest of the night was a horrifying blur. Each room had its own twisted puzzle, and each one brought me closer to understanding just how deranged this game was. The hunter, or whatever he was, never stopped stalking me. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of him at the end of a hallway, his silhouette barely illuminated by my flashlight. Other times, I'd hear him whispering my name from the shadows. By the time I reached the final room, I was shaking from exhaustion and fear. The note on the door read, "The final key lies within. Face your fear to earn your freedom." I stepped inside, and the door slammed shut behind me. The room was pitch black, except for a faint red glow coming from the center. As I approached, I realized it was a glass box with a key inside, but the box was filled with hundreds of writhing, crawling spiders. I hate spiders, hate them with every fiber of my being. But I didn't have a choice. My freedom was inches away. Gritting my teeth, I reached into the box, feeling their legs skitter across my skin. I grabbed the key and yanked my hand out, shaking off as many as I could. The door unlocked, and I stumbled outside, gasping for air. The first rays of sunlight were breaking over the horizon, and for the first time in hours, I felt like I could breathe. I didn't wait around to see if the hunter was still following me. I ran straight to my car and drove home, locking every door and window once I got there. I've been trying to make sense of it ever since. Who set this up? Why was I chosen? And most importantly, who was the hunter? I don't have answers. All I know is that I'm never going near that house again. If anyone else has experienced something like this, please let me know. I need to understand what happened to me. Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying the content. As a college student, I work hard to create these videos, and I edit everything on my mobile phone. I'm hoping to upgrade to a laptop to improve the quality of my videos, but I don't want to ask for money directly. This Christmas, if you enjoy what I do, I'd be incredibly grateful if you could consider subscribing to the channel. It would mean the world to me. Your support helps me so much as I continue working toward my goals. Wishing you all a very Merry Christmas. May this festive season bring you joy and warmth. Thanks again for your support, and stay tuned for more.